The diplomatic hall of Station Kepler 7 hummed with the usual morning chaos. Arya Voss stood near the refreshment tables, nursing her third cup of coffee and watching the Valkyrie delegation with barely concealed exhaustion. The insectoid ambassadors clicked and chittered amongst themselves, their translators converting the sounds into polite inquiries about trade routes and mineral rights. But Arya wasn't focused on the adults. She was supposed to be watching the cubs. The Valkyrie had brought their young, a decision that had surprised everyone in the human diplomatic corps. Apparently, it was some sort of cultural thing, a way to teach the next generation about peaceful cooperation. The cubs were small, about the size of house cats, with iridescent carapaces that shifted colors with their moods, and oversized compound eyes that made them look perpetually curious. There had been 5 of them at the start of breakfast. Now Arya could only see 2, wrestling near the viewport while their parents pretended not to notice. "Damn it," she muttered, setting down her coffee. Her supervisor, Ambassador Chen, was deep in conversation with the Valkyrie matriarch, completely oblivious to the missing children. Arya scanned the hall, her pulse quickening. The cubs were fast, curious, and had absolutely no sense of danger. Last week, one had nearly activated an airlock because the button was shiny. She moved through the crowd, nodding politely at various delegates, while her eyes swept every corner. The Threnodai ambassador's tentacles nearly swatted her as she passed, but she ducked smoothly. No cubs behind the dessert table, none in the viewing alcoves, none near the... A soft chittering sound caught her attention. It was coming from beneath the main conference table. Arya crouched down, lifting the edge of the tablecloth. 5 pairs of compound eyes stared back at her, glowing in the dim space. The cubs had squeezed themselves into the narrow gap between the table legs, forming a tight circle around something in the center, around Tovik. Specifically, the smallest cub sat in the middle of the group, his carapace flickering between excited yellow and contented blue. In his tiny mandibles, he held a single protein bar, one of the emergency rations from the human supply cache. It was already half-eaten, and the other cubs were taking turns leaning in to nibble at it, their movements careful and deliberate. Arya blinked. They were sharing. The cubs were actually sharing a single snack, passing it between them with what looked like practiced coordination. "Tovik," she whispered, using the translator device on her collar. "What are you all doing down there?" The cub's antennae twitched, and his carapace shifted to a guilty orange for a moment before settling back to blue. "Sharing?" The translator rendered his chirps. "Found human food? Good. Sharing is proper." The other cubs chirped in agreement, their tiny voices overlapping into a chorus of contentment. Arya felt something tighten in her chest. She'd been briefed on Valkyrie social structures. They were communal, yes, but resources were typically distributed by the adults. Cubs didn't share food voluntarily. They competed for it, fought over it, established early hierarchies through who got the most. This was different. "Where did you get the protein bar?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer. The supply cache was supposed to be secured, but cubs had a way of getting into things. Tovik's antennae drooped slightly. "Found. In small room with shiny door. We were hungry. Breakfast was..." The translator struggled for a moment. "Not for cubs, yet." Arya glanced back at the diplomatic breakfast, still in full swing. The adult Valkyrie were dining on specialized nutrient paste, engaging in their elaborate eating rituals that apparently took hours. The cubs, she realized, had been expected to just wait. "You were hungry," she repeated slowly. "So you found food and decided to share it? All of you?" "Yes," Tovik said, as if this were the most obvious thing in the universe. "One piece, 5 cubs, we split. Is right way." "One piece," the other cubs chirped again, their carapaces flickering in synchronized patterns of agreement. Arya sat back on her heels, her mind racing. This wasn't normal Valkyrie behavior. This was learned. But from where? The delegation had only been on the station for 3 days, and the cubs had barely interacted with anyone except her. Yesterday, during the cultural exchange session, Arya had been assigned to watch the cubs while the adults toured the station. She'd brought snacks, human snacks, because she always brought snacks, and when the cubs had mobbed her, demanding and competitive, she'd done what any human would do. She'd broken her granola bar into 5 pieces and given each cub one. "Share and share alike," she'd said, not even thinking about it. "Everyone gets some. That's how we do things." The cubs had stared at her like she'd just revealed the secrets of the universe. And now, less than 24 hours later, they were doing it themselves. Arya felt a smile tugging at her lips. The Valkyrie were an old species, advanced in technology and diplomacy. Humanity was the newcomer, the upstart race that had barely figured out faster than light travel. Everyone expected humans to learn from the established galactic community. But maybe, just maybe, the galaxy could learn something from humans too. "All right," she said gently, reaching under the table. "You cubs need to come out now, before your parents start panicking." But she pulled out her own emergency rations, a pack of fruit gummies, and tore it open. "Here, you can share these properly, above the table, where everyone can see." Tovik's carapace blazed bright yellow with joy. The cubs scrambled out from under the table, chittering excitedly as they formed a neat circle around Arya. She distributed the gummies one at a time, watching as each cub immediately offered a piece to the others before taking a bite themselves. Across the hall, the Valkyrie matriarch's antennae twitched, her compound eyes fixing on the scene. For a moment, Arya worried she'd overstepped, violated some cultural boundary she didn't understand. Then the matriarch's carapace shifted to a deep, respectful blue, and she bowed her head to Arya. Later, when Ambassador Chen asked what had happened, Arya simply shrugged. "Just taught them something new," she said. "Sharing is a human thing. Figured it couldn't hurt." What she didn't say, what she was only beginning to understand, was that humans had a gift. Not for technology or warfare or even diplomacy, really. Humans had a gift for making everyone around them just a little bit more human. And sometimes, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. Under the table, forgotten in the chaos, a single protein bar wrapper lay crumpled and empty. 5 sets of tiny mandible prints marked its surface, pressed together in a pattern that looked almost like holding hands. A small thing, perhaps, but small things had a way of changing the universe.